Grandma Nisi blessed a lot of people's lives, probably most of all her 8 grandchildren and 6 great-grandchildren. And I'm the luckiest one of them all because as the oldest, I got to call her Grandma for the longest. I had more bunking parties than her living room floor, ate more pieces of cinnamon toast, and had more adventures, such as changing into our swimsuits in the car and jumping into Sinking Creek together. Grandma Nisi taught me so many things. She was a strong woman and a hard worker. She was never afraid to voice her opinion, or to laugh at herself, or to laugh at us. But most memorable was her unconditional love for her family. She spoiled us grandkids and then our great-grandkids. In college, she would send me spending money and called it mad money. And in recent years in the hospital, she would always have dollar bills for my kids when they come to visit her to go to the vending machine. And that's how she was until the end. Always thinking of her family over herself, even if that meant grabbing dollars as she was being sent in an ambulance or a helicopter to St. Louis. She would do anything for us and always made sure we felt loved and special.
We used to make tents, and we used to play peekaboo in the tents, and I made puppet shows, and we used to play hide and seek, and basically she kept walking past me, and I was basically like behind her chair. It was really funny.
I remember a lot of things. She was fun, really fun to play with. She would always play canasta with us, and when we would play by our house rules, if they can even be called rules, because she would always let us cheat, even with the ones that we made up. We would float when we weren't supposed to, pick up 5 cards instead of just 2, lay down 3 instead of 1. She was fun, and she made the game worthwhile. I think she liked having food just for us whenever we came in. She was always that way. It's really funny, a couple months ago, Dad got a phone call, and she had decided that there would be no more pity parties, no more nothing. She turned the page, this is the exact word, she turned the page, and she would be really chipper and really happy in all circumstances, and that's something that I hope everybody can get to at some point.
Her love, because it didn't matter who it was, but she was always willing, just open-hearted. She didn't care if it was a stranger that walked in her house. She didn't care. She was open, willing, and loving to do whatever. And she always told us to be comfortable in her house.
I wouldn't have enough time to talk about all the good things about Grandma Nisi right now, but I have a lot of good memories of Grandma as her grandson. She loved her family dearly. Sunday lunches at her house were regular occurrences. They were some of my favorite memories. Oftentimes there would be people that weren't family members there that would join because Grandma or Grandpa would invite them at church. She loved her grandkids and just our various personalities. She let her grandkids get away with plenty, such as whenever she would play card games with Reve and let Reve make up the rules beforehand and go along with it, or when she played games with Olivia, and Olivia would change the rules while the game was being played, and she just rolled right along with it. She let her grandkids play Nintendo for hours, despite a strong, firm encouragement to go play outside, which was probably good for us. She also defended her grandchildren. I really appreciated how Grandma would stand up for me, even though, whenever I was in trouble with my parents or something, even though punishment from my parents was probably entirely deserved. I will always remember spending the night at Grandma Nisi's house, sleeping in the floor in her living room, waking up and eating cinnamon toast, which she made the best cinnamon toast. I also remember just the times when me and my brother would walk down to her house unannounced a lot of times. We would walk through the woods, and she would stop whatever she was doing, and she would play with us or talk to us or make us food, which we always loved. Simply put, grandmothers don't get better than Grandma Nisi, and I think all of her grandchildren could attest to that. Grandma Nisi was also very strong and very resilient. There were numerous times in the last 20 years where we thought we were going to lose her to some sort of ailment, and she would survive and thrive every time. When she went on dialysis, the doctors expected her to live maybe a year, given some of her health complications, and she was on dialysis for 8 years. That's just kind of the type of person she was, and during that time that she was on dialysis, she was able to witness several life events. She got to see grandkids get married, and grandkids get, the birth of her grandkids, and the birth of great-grandchildren, and grandchildren graduating from school, and all sorts of events that she was very proud of us grandkids for. She lived her life to the fullest, despite all of any type of health complications she had. She wanted to be a part, and she was very involved as a grandmother, and I will always be thankful for that. In the end, her body betrayed her, but that wasn't before she left an enduring legacy of love for all of those who knew her, especially her family and especially her grandkids. So Grandma Nisi will forever be remembered, forever be loved, and we're thankful for our memories of her.
Probably one of the things that I'll remember and miss most about Grandma is how much fun she had. And some of that fun was allowing her grandkids to be extremely ornery, which I think that she appreciated because we got that from her directly. One of my first memories is that we always played doctor, and she let me be her doctor, and she actually gave me the loving name of Dr. Quack. I would put pots and pans on her head and gently, I'm sure, hit them with sticks or whatever I could find, and she laughed all the way through it, and she would always say, "Oh no, here comes Dr. Quack," but that was our game that we always liked to play together. When I was in the 2nd grade, I found out that it was pretty easy for me to go to the school nurse and tell them that I was sick, but don't call my grandma, or call my mom, call my grandma Janice, and they would do it at least a few times a week, and Grandma would come and pick me up, and I normally would say I had a stomach ache, and she would pick me up and say, "Well, do you think you could handle Sonic?" which I always agreed to, and we would go get Sonic, and I would go to work with her where I would play games with her the whole time and drink soda and eat chocolate. And I think that she knew, obviously, that I wasn't sick, but she still picked me up every single time that they called until my mom finally had to go kind of shut that down. But we had some really good days there where I was playing hooky and she was helping me out with that in the 2nd grade. Also, we played a lot of card games, and whether it was card games or dominoes or anything, it would always be the grandkids and Grandma. So she never was going to miss the party. She was always going to be part of it and having fun and laughing the whole time. And if anyone said, "Oh, do we want to play one more game?" she was always on board. She was never going to be the first one to say, "No, let's call it a night," or "It's getting too late." It was always playing a lot of games and just having a lot of fun and laughing and having a lot of good times. The second thing that I'll remember about Grandma in this is just how loving she was. That extended beyond just her immediate family. When we brought kids home from college, any of our friends from high school, they immediately became her family too. She would ask about them, and then once we got married, then our spouses were automatically her kids and part of her family that she was still proud of. And even Jake's family, she would always say, "Oh, I just love them so much." So even my in-laws became part of her family, and her love just had no bounds, and she gave it freely and openly to everyone that she met, and that's pretty remarkable.
It's hard to talk about Grandma without talking about her ferocious loyalty and her spunky character. Ever since I was little, I've always enjoyed cupcakes, and Grandma would be kind enough to let me make cupcakes. Now, her story is, and what she's always told my mom, is that I just liked to make the cupcakes. I didn't really want to eat them. But Mom, as I can attest, and what Grandma would have told you if she was telling the truth, and as my childhood photos can attest, I didn't just make the cupcakes. I definitely ate them as well. Grandma stayed loyal my entire life. Thanksgiving, not too long ago, I was home and all the kids were gathered around watching football, and Grandma was telling me about this blanket that she made. And I was so excited, telling her, "Oh, great, that's great, Grandma." And she told me, "Well, Ryan, you get the first pick of a blanket." I was thinking I was really special. I don't know what I did to be special, and then Grandma enlightened me and said, "You get the first pick of a blanket because you have no one to keep you warm at night." All the other grandkids were married, so Grandma was thinking of me first. Unfortunately, my wife couldn't make it tonight, but she's real. She exists. So she saved me. But Grandma's character was great, and her spunkiness just followed through the rest of her life, and to the point that even in bad health, following hip surgery, she made it to my wedding in Texas. And with the help of Corey, and without breaking any major federal laws, they somehow got her out of the hospital and she made it to the wedding, and I was so happy to see her that day because I know how much that meant to her, and I hope she knew how much that meant to me. Grandma's character carried on all the way up even to her death, to the point that she was able to see all of her grandkids before she passed this earth. And I think that says a lot about her and the woman she was, because she lived life on her own terms. Grandma, thank you for living life on your own terms, and thank you for teaching me to do the same.
On December 28th, 2015, I had the honor of playing my grandma to eternal sleep. As I finished a closer walk with thee, she took her last breath. I hope the sound of my guitar and the cracking of my voice was half as comforting as the sound of waking up in her living room on a Saturday morning. She would be in the kitchen making cinnamon toast, and Grandpa at the table reading his Bible to himself silently out loud. Those two taught me so much. They taught me that blood doesn't make family, but love does. I still love hearing the story of my mom and dad's wedding. My mom and dad couldn't find my grandma and grandpa Crocker because they were at their family's house. My grandma and grandpa Schafer's, having dinner and having a lot of fun. But it's not just the love of marriage that makes a family. There's a lot of people that are listening today that call this woman Grandma Nisi. She also taught me that if your spouse is doing the right thing, even if it's inviting 50 people over for lunch at your house at a moment's notice, you shouldn't fight with them. You should just jump in and start frying hamburgers. And she also taught me that marriage is so much more fun if you can joke and tease with your best friend. I don't know how many times I have heard her say, "Kenneth!" And sadly, she taught me that love is forever. And when you lose your best friend, life will get easier with passing of time. But it's much more enjoyable with them in it. My grandma's passing was poetic. With her last breath she heard, "When my feeble life is o'er, when time for me is no more, guide me gently safely o'er, to thy kingdom shore, to thy shore." Yes, her passing had been poetic, but her life was much, much more than just poetry. It was a living example of love.